stuff. Now what do you think the canny residents of Northamptonshire thought? They thought, how do we part those people with their money? Because you can do stuff with this funny flat round stuff. So the fort goes up there, and it is likely that some of the locals from these various farms worked out very quickly. Let's go knock on the fort door. Anyone want a meat pie? My wife makes really good meat pies. Got any laundry needs doing? I've got this daughter, very willing, not very bright. So, you know, you have all these things that may have made that fort quite attractive, and what we think happened is slowly people started to settle outside the gates of the fort. It's what's called a vicus, and it happens all across the empire. Settlements develop around forts. Now that fort probably is abandoned by 61 AD, because at 61 AD there's a revolt. Boudica revolts in Norfolk. She gets defeated. Some rumours have it she was killed in Towcester. But anyway, after that the army moved north to troublesome places like Leicester and Lincoln. Alright, so the fort gets abandoned, but the people stay there, and they stay there, and the route is still there, so they start being able to sell food and drink to travellers going up and down the road. And we think that is possibly the origin of the Roman town here. Alright, as simple as that. Shall we carry on?
You okay, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah? See that butterfly?
What colour was it?
I think it was black with red and orange.
Daddy, I want to see your pit now.
Yeah, we're getting closer to my pit. But they're going to have to talk us through, as if we were walking through history of the whole place.
What did they talk through when you were here?
No, that was the thing. We just used to come from the car park, straight along here, straight in, and then straight down to our ditch or to our hole, whatever we were digging up.
What, so they'd say, your hole's over here, follow me, and they didn't do any tours?
No, that's it, because this is the tour. So they would tell us little bits and pieces as we were working, but that's why they've taken the time out today to actually help us understand the whole area.
Yeah, right. Spent most of the day yesterday doing first aid.
Oh, why?
Just people had a bouncy car, so
Oh.
always pulls.
Bang.
Contents.
Was that actually at the...
Yeah, that's
At William Mead?
William Mead, yeah,
Yeah.
they have one every year. So they will get extra time.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we came down here?
Yeah.
Including my mobile phone.
Worst 4 days of the year, I think.
Serial
You don't look forward to it
No,
then?
you just don't get anything
So I
done.
rang up.
No, it's just the first day.
got
Just
10.
doing this. Sorting out 10 days.
It's asking me to bring all my equipment in for practice. He said, oh, you've got any equipment? I left 18 months ago.
Please don't throw yourself down there.
Resist that voice in your head.
I've been mown, but they're probably still nettles there, so if you roll down the side, you might just might be rather uncomfortable afterwards, I think it's fair to say. Is that everyone there? Just about everyone coming? I just wanted people to be able to see the view here as much as anything, to be honest. It's just a lovely view across the Nen Valley and really makes you sort of see the site in its context, and it's a good point that we often talk to people about that continuity of history, the fact that County Council owns this wonderful site, which is just a small section of this wonderful historic landscape. But now that we own this section, it's a real chance for us to help people understand and value and appreciate the historic landscape that's all around us, particularly down the River Nairn. But you know, pretty much across Northamptonshire at certain periods, and this, I say, this site is very, very typical. So do we want to do Mesolithic and onwards, and then you do all these
all right.
buildings?
Now, as you can see, it's got a great view over the river. It was in prehistory a really good place to get a view of the river. Sorry, for those of you who can't see the river, it's that invisible streak that passes under the bridge over there. Anyone's heard me speak before about the River Nene, know I'm very rude about it. It flows upstream when the wind blows strong enough. I grew up in Oxfordshire, where at least the River Thames knows which way it's going. Anyway, the River Nene as it stands now goes under the bridge there. But the significance of this location is this floodplain here is well over 1 kilometre wide. And when you look at the volume of water in the river, at this point, before the navigation, you may have been looking at 6 or 10 separate river courses, shallow river courses. So because of that, at this point, you'd be able to come down this side of the valley in this bit here and just hop, skip and paddle your way across the river. And that, I think, is the attraction in the Roman period and earlier periods. Now, the river flows so slowly, really does flow slowly, that it would have been weedy, sedgy, reeds, all sorts of things in there. But that in itself made it ideal for wildfowl. And one thing we found in excavations on this area were hundreds of Mesolithic flints. Flints from hunter-gatherers, people who didn't live in one place forever, people who didn't farm. They'd come to places like this and they'd follow the herds of wild animals or the flocks of migrating birds and hunt for them. And so what we think possibly happened is people would have been sat here going, the Canada geese are ready, and off they'd go and hunt them with their bow and arrow. And what we found are all the little flint blades from the hunter-gatherers. So it is likely that this point here, on a regular basis, had prehistoric hunter-gatherers camped on it. Not living here, but just staying here maybe for a couple of weeks, because after a while the birds probably got used to them and thought, oh God, here comes Stig of the Dump, and then people would move off. But certainly a very key point. It's key on another level because you can see here how the valley side comes down right the way onto the floodplain. Whereas elsewhere you've got that scarp where you fell off the edge, here it takes you right the way down onto the floodplain and you get right across it. Now on the far side there's been a gravel pit. There are a number of gravel pits around here, I've dug some of them myself. And the gravel pit over there, they found a causeway that links up with our Roman road. So obviously some parts of the floodplain, they'd build just a low bank. So if there was a bit of a flood, it gave them even more of a dry walking route to get across. Okay? So this, I think, is probably Mother Nature's best present to Irchester. Now, the river that I'm so rude about, the reason it is so big as a valley and so small as a river is it was formed by basically glacial meltwater streams. It was scoured out when there was ice from glaciers melting elsewhere, and they scoured out the valley to this sort of scale. The River Nene as it is at the moment would trouble itself to scour a teacup. But anyway, it's a little valley, it's a little river in a very big valley, but it gives very rich, very light soils, very good for later settlement, later agriculture. And work I've done in some of the other quarries down towards Wellingborough give us evidence that in the Neolithic period this landscape was periodically cleared of trees to create small fields. And one thing that you might not realise is the trees of the ancient woodland in the Neolithic, so 6,000 years ago, was lime, not oaks, because we always think of the old majestic oak everywhere. They were lime trees. And for those of you that can't imagine what a lime tree looks like, they are limes. You'll get quite close to them, probably dripped on by them. But the lime trees dominated the landscape. We had lots of Tiliot lime pollen from the work at Turnall's Mill Lane, and what we had in amongst it was evidence of bracken. And the Neolithic people would have come in, cut the trees down, created small fields, farmed them till the soil was depleted, then abandoned them, moved maybe a mile away, cleared another area, and the forest regenerated in the meantime. So just so you have an idea of this landscape in early prehistory, but it is a cracking Roman town behind us. Now, the significance of the Roman town is more than just the fort. Because we have such a good river crossing, the Roman occupation of Britain will have cited locations that had good crossings, good communications. Because imagine you're the emperor sat on your throne in Rome, and you want to get a message to, somewhere easy to get to, like Corbridge. Anybody know where Corbridge is? Yes. Yeah. It's even difficult in a car. So send the message with the emperor. The emperor give it to the horseman. Horseman get on his horse. 15 miles later, that horse is tired. And the system that the Romans adopted was a system that they call the cursus publicus, the imperial mail system, for want of a better term, which meant every few miles along the road there would be places where these messengers could change their horses. Now, who might the locals want to murder or rob? Imperial officials. And so what you find also along these routes is what are called mancios. They're a sort of imperial travel lodge. And in the middle of this town, in the geophysics, we have a building here with lots of little rooms. Can you see those little rooms? And there as well, more little rooms. A little square building with lots and lots of little rooms. And that, we think, is possibly a mancio. They're always located 1 block away from the main road. Because the one thing the emperor didn't want to do was wreck the retail value of the town. So he always puts it 1 block back. And what this would have been is where soldiers, officers, civil servants, imperial merchants would have gone for safe sleeping. And the facilities they would have had there, they'd have been fed, they'd have had rooms, and they would also have had access to a bathhouse, which is what that is. So over in that grassy area, you've got your shops, you've got a fort that's gone, you've got houses, you've got temples, you've got an imperial motel, you've got a bathhouse. And you know what you'd smell? Apart from the obvious pong of people and food, wood smoke. So when you actually stand here now, and you can't really smell a great deal, fresh outdoors. If you've got a town there, there would have been an all-pervading smell of wood smoke because they cooked with wood, they stayed warm with wood. So even this time of year, you'd have gone, wood fires. All right. Anyway, if we carry on up the defences.
Oh, Dad, got Pleados and noodles. I
Oh,
want to
that's-
take my shoes off.
Yeah. Did you want to get up, get down and walk then?
No,
Well, you just go through the
I'm going to take the other shoe. Daddy, I need to take the other shoe off. Daddy, can I hold it?
Challenge, just over there. How did you go today? Were you here?
No, I wasn't. I had to stay off. A few bits and pieces done. I'm back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Friday at Ipswich, Saturday, Sunday I'm at Silverstone.
Oh, right.
So,
Anything nice up there?
Silverstone,
Yeah.
classic cars.
Oh, lovely.
So I'm a volunteer there.
Oh, fantastic.
Did Formula One,
Yeah.
and then there's MotoGP later in the year, and plus it's the bikes, the super bikes, I think, sometimes. So we do about 4 or 5 events up there.
Lovely.
It's great fun.
As
Hard
you
work.
cross here, mind out for high-speed chariots going down the road.
See where they've been, look. see the ruts.
That's Andy and his little tractor.
Do you want me to excavate the ruts?
You'll hold that against me, won't you?
No, not really.
They look very good.
So, Ian, this bank up here, is that natural? Was that part of the landscape that's been added?
Tramway.
Ah, okay. So can you see those trees up there, Amelia? Those are the lime trees that Ian was talking about.
Yeah, I think you need it when you have the cafe.
You'll see.
There's a lot of artist impressions,
Stand up
starting
the
with
top.
nothing here except the odd little house.
Yes.
Right the way
Thatch
down
on
to
it.
the house.
Daddy,
See the house
What
over there?
happened next, then to the Roman towns
Yeah.
when it's died. Then that back
I
to where
agree. I think that artistry construction
It's a surprise for later. But we didn't come up to here, did we?
No, I think that's
It's for
great.
later. We didn't come up here, did we?
See, and they're looking, sitting there.
what does it have? Some snacks in it?
No.
Drink.
No, don't worry about it.
Now, can we stop here just a moment? I ought to tell you a little bit more about the Roman town. You know, I feel morally obliged to give you a real Roman fix.
We've got a medieval village over there, and we've got
Well, that's why I've got my back to it, and it's Roman over there.
No, that's a ridden furrow field from the medieval village.
Two little facts.
You can't alter it.
One thing that was found in the past associated with this site was a tombstone of a man called a Strator. Now, having talked about the Imperial Mail Service and all the horses they used, one of the people that came to Irchester and died was a Strator. A Strator was a man responsible for obtaining, acquiring, buying remounts, horses. And it's quite possible, and he was an imperial official, and it's quite possible he was obtaining those remounts for the cavalry, the army, and the mail service. So that's one thing. We're lucky that the excavation's over in the big white sheds carried out by a colleague like Steve Morris, who some of you have met on site. Found in amongst the bones there evidence of a young foal, actually more than one young foal. So there's evidence of young horses there. We've had evidence of young horses also from the excavations we carried out ourselves. So it suggests that there may be horse rearing going on around here. I think one of the key things about all these sites is it's fields now, so you've got to try and imagine what the landscape around was like. Now, the other thing which you might be unaware of is this town sits in the middle of a major wine producing region. Yeah, you see, suddenly interested. The first Roman vineyard to be proved in Britain was in Wollaston. In the gravel pits on the north side of Hardwater Road. I found that about 15 years ago, nearly 20 years ago. And what the evidence took the form of a series of parallel trenches which contained the root balls of the vines, holes with the upright posts to support the vines, but the clincher was pollen. Now, Vitis pollen would struggle to travel from me to you. It might get from me to you, but it won't go any further. It's not like grass pollen. I get hay fever, so I hate pollen. We've done various work on organic vineyards, measuring how far it travels. So it doesn't travel very far. So the fact we had Vitis pollen in the ground proves they were growing grapevines. Now, I had a really tough study trip going around a few vineyards in Britain. They always want you to try the wine. It's so difficult. I found one on almost exactly the same latitude as Wollaston in Cambridgeshire. And they gave me free bottles as well. It's great. Anyway, but the wine they would have produced would have been white wine. They wouldn't have had enough sunlight and heat to ripen the grapes for red wine, but white wine. And the first vineyard, just to give you an idea how much wine it produced, you know the large petrol tankers you see on garage forecourts? Imagine that full of a fruity white wine. Because that's what came from the first vineyard, and that carried on up the slope from the valley. We subsequently found a second vineyard south of Hardwater Road in Wollaston, and then further looking at other excavated sites in Grendon, we found another 2 vineyards. So just imagine, Nen Nouveau. So Irchester would have been the centre of a wine-producing region. And a couple of years ago, another vineyard was found on the road out to Sywell from Wellingborough. Now, the wine would have been white wine. Whether it's sweet or dry, we don't know. But it would have been traded in barrels, not in amphorae. Amphorae being the pots that are used for wine and oil in the Mediterranean, but in Northern Europe it's barrels. We've got lots of big barrels from Germany, silver fir barrels, stand about this high. They're sort of, a wine box. I could do that in a week. But quite big wooden barrels. So it's quite possible this town had a large number of coopers working in it, making the barrels to contain the wine. All right. So just so you have that idea of the industry and the activity the town had. Sarah's quite right that there is medieval stuff.
People living here, flying their trains, trying to wash their clothes in the majestic river Nene.
You see, it's well, they were always a bit scruffy in medieval.
That's why they built this here, because there was a river crossing. It's an history.
Now, just so some of you realise, the bank behind us isn't Roman. All right, thought I'd best straighten that out. That's actually about 90 years old. It's the base of a tramway. Is it the 1920s one or is it the old one? Yeah. So it's a 1920s tramway for the ironstone quarrying over in the distance, and they'd have got the wagons along that, and you can see a little dip in the hedgerow there. They took the wagons on rails through into the Roman town, then they used the gradient, the slope, to take it down the slope towards Whitworth's Mill. Iron from Irchester ends up in northeast England to be converted to iron. So, you know, that would have been a very industrial piece. Shall I mention those?
What about the Romans then? Did they do anything with the ironstone?
Yes. Yeah.
We'll see that in a minute.
You'll see that in a minute.
The other thing, I suppose, is that we were coming into the complex and the buildings, and so we were also in part of what in the 17th, 18th century and into the 19th century was sort of a designed landscape as well. So it was operating as a farm from the 17th century. We know that by the 18th century, the owners of the farm sort of laid out this whole area, sort of parkland. And some of you have been aware of Capability Brown and all the things in the press about however many 100 years it is since his birth. So in Northamptonshire, here in Chester Farm, we had someone who was trying exactly to do that. So we had this lovely house built, set out a formal garden plus some rides across the landscape. Up, I mean, Ian talks about all these wonderful Roman things in this patch over there. So there's a mock Chinese temple there. I mean, that was much more exciting. So in the 18th century, you bring your guests down the wonderful Lime Avenue, take them out for a ride in your horses, and then show them a Chinese temple. So that was getting people living here with some aspirations to grandeur. And we've got lots of stories about the different owners and occupiers of the house that, you know, we hope again to bring to life as part of this project. And the buildings themselves are really, really important as well.
Right.
Is that allowed?
Yeah.
Okay, we need to come down because we're going to walk through the next bit.
It was a flat pack, but anyway,
Immediately, I can't walk through the next bit because
highest
it could be
point of the Roman
dangerous.
town, the view.
Because we're going to go to the pits now.
It was Chinese.
You'll see why you can't go on my shoulders, darling. Yeah, okay. Well, you've been walking a long, long way. And also, we're just coming up to the
If you
last
look
little bit.
over there, there's an orchard. Just so some of you realise, this project, although I'm a Romanist, you know, I'm aware there's more than one strand to it. And I get bad press, but the orchard there's a lot of trees in it that we didn't know what varieties they were. So last year in the autumn, when they were in fruit, we took specimens from each of the trees, we photographed the leaves, we did all sorts of things, and I ferried them down to Brogdale in Kent. And we have a list now of the varieties, or most of the varieties, that are growing in the orchard, which is really quite useful because it is a site where it's not just about the Romans, but they are the most important part.
It's a settlement over 10,000 years is the most important part.
This is the
Technical bit as well.
4 now.
You've done 4.
Yeah.
But everyone did descend from them, don't they?
So
Now,
now you're
before we go through, just
listen.
a couple of words of sort of safety, advice and whatever. We've got various excavations open. Don't stand near the edges because people are known to slip in. Andy did earlier today. So stay away from the edges of the trenches. There are blue sheets that you'll see sticking up. Please don't throw yourself on them in a moment of mad panic because it's not just plastic piping. There's a steel rod inside each one. So suicide attempts, think of the paperwork I'd have to go through.